After their legendary journey out of danger and into the safe haven of Whitedale Park, the animals of Farthingwood look forward to getting used to their new life in the nature reserve. But winter is drawing near. The nights are colder and food for the animals is getting scarce. Other animals in the park are unfriendly and want to make trouble. And around the park are the perils of hunters' traps, as well as humans and the machines. Will life ever return to normal for the animals of Farthingwood?
No power in the verse can stop me.
What's going on, guys? My name is Eldeniro, and welcome to another episode of the Midnight Hour. I'm joined once again by my co-host Jack, who's going to tell you exactly what episode number this is.
It's number 13, which is, I think, to be honest, I think I was quite paranoid about the number 13. We talked about the paranormal last time, and he said that he wouldn't do it on episode 13 because he's kind of scared of that number for some weird reason.
Definitely happened.
Yeah.
That's why you'll notice.
That's definitely a thing.
We did a whole episode about fears and phobias, and we didn't even mention that fear, the number 13 at all in it, even though we did. But like, you're not going to go back and listen.
Because I totally didn't just make it up on the spot right now.
Yeah. Exactly. Pretty much like all the intros that we do.
Yeah.
But we've got a question for you guys at the start of this episode, all you people who are listening. Before you put your iPad down and before you put your phone away, leave a comment and let us know, because it's good to gauge feedback and this will help make the show better for everybody. What's your favourite episode so far of the Midnight Hour? What has been your favourite one? What's been your favourite one, Jack?
Right, you've put me on the spot now.
It's hard, isn't it?
To be honest, I did really enjoy the fears and phobias one. I really enjoyed that one. But then again, I really enjoyed our top 5 video games one as well.
Yeah, the top 5 video games one was really fun for me because
Yeah.
I enjoy anything where I get to talk about Metal Gear Solid 2.
Yeah.
But the fears and phobias one I thought had a nice blend of, like, it was informative and it was personal, and it also like there was a little bit of self-discovery in there as well, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But yeah, that one was pretty good. But I like the conspiracy theories type ones as well, where we, because like it's like I learn stuff too, so it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's always nice.
Yeah, but today we're going to be talking about a lot of people in the last episode left comments saying to talk about coincidences, and I thought, like, that's a pretty broad topic and it's pretty difficult to discuss, but I think that one thing that we do pretty well as a duo, a podcasting duo taking on the world, is that when we pick a topic, I think we're pretty good at like bending the topic around what we want to talk about and making it interesting when we do, or at least I hope so anyway. But we're going to be doing that in this episode. There'll be a lot of coincidences, but also some stuff just about maybe just statistical probability and how likely it is that something could happen, because I think that goes under the bracket of coincidences. And a lot of people sort of didn't really appreciate how cynical we were when addressing certain areas of the paranormal last week, and to be honest, like, we understand. We had the exact same reservations about the episode itself. So this time, instead of talking about things that we don't believe in that scare some people, we're going to just talk about some things that you can be fascinated by that actually happened and that nobody can be cynical about because it happened. So I think that's a pretty fair, spin-off of the last episode. Yeah. So we're going to start off with this story about a cab driver in the 1970s in Bermuda, of all fucking places. So what happened was a 17-year-old was driving his moped through the streets of a town called Hamilton in Bermuda, and a taxi driver ran him over. And then almost a year later, a 17-year-old Erskine Lawrence Eben was driving the same moped through the streets of Hamilton when the same cab driver plowed into him and killed him. If that's not weird enough, he was carrying the same passenger as he was the previous year when he ran over the guy's twin brother. They were twin brothers driving the same moped, killed by the same taxi driver, carrying the same passenger in the same town, in the same planet, in the same universe. Can it get any weirder than that? But how fucked is that?
I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, let's not forget that these. I can't words, but the fact that it's the same moped. Like, I mean, I can understand maybe two brothers dying in a similar way. Both getting hit while out, during their shared love of motorbikes. But twin brothers getting killed a year apart on the same moped by the same guy in the same taxi.
Yeah. Like,
that's ridiculous. Like,
that guy must feel so bad about himself. Like, he's wiped a pair of twins off the planet who are like driving the same moped. Like, I'd say he must have consulted the family at some point. Like, they must have spoken, and it must have been so awkward. But yeah, that whole incident must have been just I don't know. Like, obviously, I think, is it fair to say, or is it overly critical to say, that the first brother that died must have been at fault because the taxi driver was on the road in the same taxi less than a year later? That sort of implies that he got off with it.
Yeah,
which must
that's kind of, he didn't go to a, well, he might have done some jail time for it, less than a year, potentially, but the likelihood is that the original moped driver was at fault.
Yeah.
And, they say that twins are, their twins are incredibly similar. And maybe their disregard for road safety and, when riding their favourite moped was the same.
This would actually be the perfect time to transition to the other story about twins.
This was I remember this was one that I heard in school a lot, actually, in secondary school. And it was the story of kind of fraternal twins, so a boy and a girl, twins, were separated at birth because they were adopted by separate parents. The story that I heard was that they met on the London Tube, and they kind of fell in. Of course, they didn't know who each other were. They kind of met on the Tube, fell in love, and got married. And only afterwards did they find out that they were twins.
Yeah, this is like, I can't even imagine what it must have been like to A, figure that out, but B, how they dealt with that, like, at the time, because obviously you have all of these feelings and all that they must have believed were 100% sincere and everything, and you just cannot go, like, you can't just continue knowing what you know, really. Plus, it's fucking illegal, so, but, that's so, I don't know, I used to be a lot different to how I am now. I used to read The Sun when I was in college, and I remember the... you ever read The Sun? You know the Dear Deirdre column?
Oh, those are fantastic.
Yeah, those are brilliant. But there was one of those one day, like, The Sun was... In my college, we had, like, a cafeteria, and there were newspapers stacked up, and I just read The Sun because I wanted fast, easily digestible information that I could just dismiss as bullshit after I read it. But I was reading the Dear Deirdre section, and there was a woman who wrote in and said that she had just reunited with her brother that she hadn't seen for, like, 29 years, and she had, like... what would be like romantic feelings for him, and now I don't know how insightful or knowledgeable Deirdre actually is, but she said that it's actually surprisingly common for siblings who have been reunited after a long time of absence, for all of these feelings, the emotions that overcome them, to just manifest themselves as romantic sort of emotions. And I guess I could kind of see that if you had grown up an only child and never had a brother or a sister, and not knowing how to react to them. It's kind of an adult, sort of modern adult way of looking at it, I think. Like, as weird as that sounds. You see it you probably see it in movies and rom-coms and shit like that all the time. But it does kind of make sense to me when I look at it that way. But what do we know? Whatever became of them? Like, how did that? Do they still speak? Or?
The twins ended up obviously getting their marriage annulled because it's illegal. That it was annulled by a court. But
absolutely.
As to what happened after that is unknown. But I mean, you saying, about the single, the only child thing. I think people are attracted. Let's forget the whole twins, brother, sister reunited after years. People are attracted to those that are similar to themselves.
Yeah, that is true.
You're attracted to people with similar interests, similar, kind of things. And clearly, in terms of this kind of twin thing, and this long lost brother and sister thing, it clearly also boils down to a deeper, possibly a deeper kind of ingrained, almost genetic kind of thing.
Yeah.
It boils down to something that's not necessarily a personality trait that's selected, but more of kind of one that's kind of a natural thing that's there.
Yeah, I agree.
You know.
Yeah, that like there's obviously like, I mean, they're carrying the same genes. There's bound to be enough patterns in their brain that just lead them to these similar experiences. None of which are as mind-bogglingly similar as the next one that you have to talk about, though.
Yeah, I mean, I've managed to find a couple of, I say, sources for this, but I mean, there's a BBC article from, I think it was 2008, which I trust the BBC. I'd say that's a fairly conclusive bit of evidence, really, that this is actually a true thing. But it's another story of twins separated at birth. They were both orphaned and adopted by separate families. Miles. This is in America, so hundreds of miles across the country. They were both named Jim by their respective parents. Both grew up to marry women named Linda, and then divorce those women, and then to women named Betty. And they both had kids named James Allen. Admittedly, the spellings were slightly different, but I think,
then this is fucking nonsense.
Yeah, it's bullshit. Yeah, I think I'll allow the discrepancies in the spelling of Allen.
Yeah.
In this case, but they both worked as sheriff deputies. They both drank the same beer. They both smoked the same cigarettes, and they both drove the same model of Chevrolet. And they didn't meet for the first time until they're 39 years old.
And they were both 39 years old.
And that dun dun dun, the big twist ending there.
Yeah. And they were both born on the same day. Imagine these twins.
These twins born on the same day to the same mother. Would you believe it?
But yeah, that is what we said about genetics and how things are likely to fall down a certain path and things like that. Nothing can really prepare you for the statistical improbability that is what you've just described. Jim marries Linda, marries Betty, Paul. Was it Paul and Alan?
James Allen, yeah.
James Allen, yeah.
And then across the country, the identical-looking Jim marries Linda, marries Betty, has a kid called James Allen. Drinks all the same stuff, smokes all the same cigarettes, drives the same car, has the same job.
Yeah.
I mean, ridiculous, isn't it?
If who's that director who made that fucking The Notebook, that like all his movies are the same movie? If he like, all his movies are awful, but if he made a movie about this, I would be fucking fuming at how ridiculous a notion it is. And here we have an actual case of this actually happening. Like, I've always I think everybody really has been interested in twins, particularly identical twins, because you want to know how similar they are and things like that.
Yeah, they are an abnormality, essentially.
For sure, yeah. I went to school with twins who, although they had similar interests and stuff, they were mostly fairly independent of each other, like they weren't they were identical twins, but just completely different personalities. And I don't know, I think when you first form ideas and generalizations and things, you tend to draw on your own experiences, and that's all that we can really do. So I never really assumed that the idea that twins are very similar. I thought it was just the same as any other siblings.
Yeah.
But I assume that because of this story, there's definitely some credence to be lent to the idea that twins are very, very, very fucking similar, and not just in the way that they look, because that's just a bizarre set of coincidences that,
Yeah, I think. I've just kind of thought of this. The fact that they have a taste for the same things, not just like the cars and the job and stuff like that, but say like a literal taste for the certain brand of cigarettes and this certain brand of beer. Do you think that gives some notion to the idea of nature, like the nature versus nurture kind of thing, that they've got this predisposition from the genetics of, say, their father or their mother or something like that?
I think it almost. I think it would be really foolish to say that it doesn't, it sort of has to somewhere in their brain, that has to exist. But at the same time, given how radical this coincidence is, it's also perfectly logical to say that it just happened that way, isn't it? I guess it's a really hard thing to actually attempt to differentiate between the two and figure out your own truth about, but it is just. It's just fucking bizarre. There's no I've never heard of any story that has sort of surprised me in that sort of a way, and that's something that's actually happened, and it's just I don't know, it's unfathomable. I wonder how that must have went when they first met. I don't know, when Homer meets his brother and his brother's played by Danny DeVito. Talking about The Simpsons here, obviously, for any idiots out there who don't know. But when it's just, you're just like me with a little more and a little less, like, and you know, Danny DeVito has more hair, which is the great irony in that. And I don't know, it's things like that are just fucking fascinating to me, and like I would have loved to have witnessed them they're actually uniting for the first time, you know. And I guess like if that happened to me, if I met another version of me who drank Corona and, you know, was addicted to the internet and played FIFA and had a YouTube channel, and all of these things, I would be inclined to attempt to kill him, because he's definitely the evil version of me who's been sent to challenge me in some way. And
the anti-L.
Yeah, and there can only be one. Like,
no, yeah, there can only be one.
Yeah, it is crazy. Like, I'm sure that must have led to some like sleepless nights and just moments of what the actual fuck, because I don't know if it's just me that would look at it that way. Like, obviously I wouldn't want to kill the guy, but I would definitely question a lot about my existence.
I think it would start to make me kind of almost question my own sanity, you know. I mean, if you say you strongly believed in the idea that, you know, everybody is an individual and everybody takes their own choices and takes their own path in life, you know, and every decision that you make affects your, you know, how you live in the world around you and stuff like that, and then you come across someone who looks exactly like you, has the same job as you, pretty much has the same history as you, drinks the same drinks, smokes the same cigarettes, drives the same car, that must, you know, your brain would just, my brain would not be able to cope.
No, that would be
this whole thing.
That would plunge me into an existential crisis.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's just because of the way that I'm wired, but I feel like that's the only real conclusion for me from that.
Yeah. I feel like you can either go to the path of, you know, oh, this is really cool, I've got someone that I can share everything that I love with because we're on that exact same wavelength, or you go, I've lost all of my individuality. Anything that I thought was individual to me clearly isn't.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you think maybe if they met for the first time and just got talking, and over time they learned all of these things, do you think that would soften the blow, or do you think it would still...
Yeah. I think, say they met for the first time and Jim kind of went to Jim and said, do you want me to get you a beer? And he went, yeah, I'll have a Corona. And Jim went, good choice.
Yeah.
I like you already. And then he went, oh, do you mind if I pop out for a fag? And he was like, yeah, sure, I'll come with you. And, you know, both popped out the same cigarettes and lit up and kind of thought, good taste, you know, good guy, you know. I think
this guy checks out.
Yeah, this guy's an alright guy, you know. Like, I think maybe over time it would, you know, if this whole thing was revealed over time, it might kind of actually bring you closer.
Yeah.
But revealed all at once is kind of a big kind of what the fuck.
Yeah, it's overwhelming, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. There's a guy who... One of my mates showed me this on Facebook one day. It's just... He's just drummer in a band, in a heavy metal band, and they have a Facebook page, and that's all I know. My mate sent me it. He saw it on, like, I think it was a promoted, you know how you get those promoted posts on your wall on Facebook. So I don't think he could ever go back to it after he saw it for the first time. But the drummer of the band is literally looks the exact same as me, and I have one of those really weird faces. Like, I have, like, I don't know, like, my forehead is bigger than the normal humans, I think, but I have long hair so no one notices. My nose is very triangular and a little bit misshapen. None of those things are true, but, you know, like, I look a little bit different to most people, I think. Like, it's very hard to find somebody who looks exactly like me, and this guy is the fucking spit of me. Like, it's crystal clear. He's actually, I used the screenshot that my friend sent me of the guy. It's my picture on my Viber and WhatsApp, and nobody has ever questioned me on it because they all just believe that it's me. I once put it into my group chat on WhatsApp, and all my friends were like, why are you showing us a picture of yourself? Like, the dude looks exactly fucking like me, and it's fucking scary to me because he's the only one. Like, I don't look like any celebrity. Well, I look a little bit like if Beyonce had a white brother with blonde hair. Like, that's what I look like, I think, anyway. I definitely have some kind of resemblance with Beyonce, but this dude looks exactly like me, and that's a little bit scary to me, like a little bit weird.
Yeah.
But that's nothing. It's nothing
Yeah,
compared
it's nothing
to what
compared
this
to
guy
this.
does.
So you saying about him being a drummer in a band? Have you seen the guy Will Ferrell is basically the spit of the Red Hot Chili Peppers drummer?
Is it Flea? Is he the? Oh no, is he the? Wait, Flea is the drummer in Red Hot Chili Peppers, isn't he?
I think it's the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Let's have a look.
Let's do a quick little Google.
Let's check this on the Google because we're organised.
Chad Smith.
Oh right.
Chad Smith. If you wanna, or if you, I don't know if you wanna put this up or on the screen now, or if someone wants to Google Chad Smith, and he's the spit of Will Ferrell.
Let's have a look here and see this. Okay, yeah, that's a strong similarity.
Yeah, and they actually recently got together and for charity did a drum off. They did a drum competition for charity.
That's like, do you remember Doppelganger Week on Facebook?
No. I remember there being. I remember there's always been a lot of things about doppelgangers, but
yeah, like I don't know, everybody had these celebrities as their picture, and I didn't know about my drummer in a band guy who looks exactly like me, who, by the way, actually, I'll put his picture on the screen, and in the unlikely event that anyone knows who the fuck he is, let me know. Please leave a comment. I really want to find out, and get in touch with my long lost brother. But the doppelganger thing, like, all my friends were putting up people who, like, they look relatively similar to, like, a lot of celebrities, and I had nobody, and I just had a picture of Beyonce because it's the closest that it gets. But I don't know, I was wondering who you would use as yours, and then I immediately remembered that you would just put Jack Swagger, because that's a piece of comedic genius that even you couldn't overlook.
Yeah, that's very true.
I actually do remember there being there's a picture somewhere of Jack Swagger, the wrestler, and he looks very like you in it. But I think it's one of your weird bath poses or something like that.
Oh, good stuff.
Yeah, but I remember looking at it and saying it to one of my friends, and he's like, yeah, they do look alike. I was like, his name is Jack Swagger, and his name is Jack Swagasaurus. And my mate was like, well, they both sound like cunts, so...
Yep.
I made that last bit up.
Should we move on to whatever you've got lined up for us next?
Yeah, this is another kind of... I mean, I think we kind of maybe peaked in terms of mind-bogglingness with the last one, but this one is in a world of its own, in my opinion. So there's a guy by the name of Terry Cottle who, until the year 1995, I think, was... he was a married man. He was married to a woman called Cheryl. Her name was Cheryl Cottle, naturally. And when he was at the lovely, easy, pronounceable age of 33, they had financial problems, and Cheryl left Terry, and overwhelmed with just misery and all of this suffering, Terry Cottle got a gun and shot himself in the head and died. Cheryl, his wife, or well, his widow at this stage, offered up his heart, like, to, she signed off for a donation so that it could be donated to a guy, and a man named Sonny Graham was the donor. He received Terry Cottle's heart, and did I say Sony Graham? Because I meant to say Sonny Graham, because Sony would be a fucking ridiculous name. But Sonny Graham received Terry Cottle's heart, and Sonny Graham contacted Cheryl just to say thanks for doing it, because you wait a long time for a heart transplant, and there's all this uncertainty, and this was in the 90s as well, so nothing near as advanced as they have now. But this is an awful device to use in any story, but one thing led to another, and Sonny and Cheryl got married. So Sonny, who had received a heart from a guy who killed himself, eventually married the widow that was left behind when Terry did kill himself. So Sonny and Cheryl got close, but then in the year 2008, again, financial problems were on the horizon, and their relationship was struggling, and Sonny just went out back and got I think it was a shotgun. He put it to his head and shot himself, and then he died. So what happened here was that two guys who owned the same heart at different points in their lives committed suicide in the same way due to relationship struggles with the same woman. She has broken the same heart twice, and it's resulted in a suicide twice. That's fucked.
That is massively fucked. I mean, you can't even... You've got to feel... I say you've got to feel bad for her, but she's caused two suicides, essentially.
Yeah. Like, I wonder...
I'm not sure if I feel bad for her, or if... Like, I'm not sure if I should feel bad for her or not. Should I?
I don't know. It kind of implies heavily on the article that I read that the root of the issues were finance. And obviously I think financial struggles will lead to relationship struggles, but relationship struggles won't lead to financial struggles. So I think it's likely that it was just the money, and like obviously like suicide isn't a rational thing. Anyone who commits suicide isn't thinking rationally. So the likelihood is they weren't really thinking about her. They were just thinking about them because depression kind of is about this sort of tainted self-absorption that happens. So I do feel bad for her. I think that she is a survivor. I don't know the whole story, but I think that given what happened to Terry, the first guy, I'd say that she treaded very carefully in the relationship with Sonny, but you I don't know, you just don't know. It's just one of those things that's really bizarre. Like, if I didn't know anything about anything to do with this case and I just heard that man A and man B both committed suicide over girl C, I'd be inclined to just blame the woman, because that's just the kind of default reaction. But when you look into it and the finances, and I don't know, it's very strange. Plus the fact that they bonded over the heart in the first place kind of suggested it was just one of those relationships where that's just what drew them together. It wasn't a spontaneous traditional relationship in that sense, if there even is such a thing. So I don't know, I kind of find it hard to blame her, but I'm trying to imagine how she must feel. And
I mean, the survivor's guilt of that kind of thing is kind of ridiculous. She does, putting organs onto the donor list, for donation is a great thing, to do. Because there are a lot of people out there that need various organs and rely heavily on not people dying, but organs becoming available, as it were. So she did this good thing in putting her husband's, was it her husband or was he her ex-husband?
No, he was her husband. One.
Yeah, her husband's organs onto the transplant list, and then she kind of bonds with this new guy over her dead husband's heart. It's kind of very, very sad for her. And then her new husband, her new love, kills himself. Not only ignore the whole fact that it's the shared heart and things, but she's gone through two husbands who have committed suicide. The survivor's guilt must be ridiculous. It's really hard to kind of fathom what she must be going through. Like 2 weddings, 2 suicides, because I know divorce is a lot more I think divorce is a lot more of a serious thing than separation, because it involves a legal process, and that can be pretty, that'll take its toll on you. But in this case, it was 2 deaths from husbands, and that includes like drawing up a will. She's been widowed by 2 different guys, and that's just fucking harsh. Like, that's just really harsh. I don't really know. Like, with all of these things, I like to try and get into the head of the victims. But it's just really tragic with this one. Side note for you, do you believe in donating your organs? Like, is that something you're gonna? Yep. Yeah, I'm on my driver's license. I'm an organ donator.
That's cool.
I'm an organ donor. That's probably the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, no, donator with a 3 instead of an E.
Yeah, donator. Yeah.
I'm the same. I remember listening to this radio station one day where they were doing like a chat show thing, and there's some guy who just didn't want to give up his organs, and he just said it was for a personal belief, and it was really hard to actually call him out on it and say, well, you're a cunt, because what you're basically saying is, well, you don't believe in the same thing as I do, therefore you're a cunt, and you can't really go and do that. So if people don't want to, it's sort of fair enough, depending on what they think.
I don't know. I think I'd struggle to agree with anyone whose personal belief doesn't stem from like a fairly grave circumstance, or if say a religion, I could kind of understand their religious want to be buried intact, as it were. But unless you're extremely religious, I don't see why you should really not donate your body to science or donate your organs to
I think a lot of that,
someone else.
I think it sort of stems from not knowing what's going to happen to you when you die. Because I remember, do you ever see the movie The Bucket List with Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman?
Yeah.
So there's a line in that movie that Jack Nicholson says where he's like, I don't know about getting buried or cremated, because if I get buried, what if I wake up? And if I get cremated, what if I feel the flames? And that's just something that I kind of always relate back to. What's going through the head of someone who doesn't want to give up their organs? It must be something like that. It must be that, you know, they think they're going to exist somewhere else in another spirit or something, and without their organs, they won't be fully equipped to deal with that. That's the only way I can look at it.
I guess I've always had I suppose a good word for it would be I've had a cavalier attitude towards what happens to my body after I'm dead. I kind of believe that once you're dead, you're dead. That's it, done.
Yeah, same.
That's welcome to the darkness.
Pretty much.
But like my attitude's always kind of be, stick me in the oven and take all the money you wanted to put into a funeral and just go down to the pub and get everyone wasted. Yeah. Have fun. Celebrate my life. Don't mourn my death.
It's sort of like that Holden Caulfield attitude where it's like, if I die, just throw me in a river. Like, who wants flowers when you're dead? Nobody.
Yeah, exactly.
This has gone way off tangent, but we'll loop you back in with a good one after I just say this one thing. About the people who wonder what happens after you die. I wonder why does nobody ever think about what you were like before you were alive, because you can't remember it because it was nothing. That's what it'll be like when you're dead. Yeah, exactly. Good night, everyone. Nah, just kidding. So this next one, this doesn't come from a good place either. Most of these are pretty tragic. There was a woman by the name of Fagiliu Mukametsyanov. That was actually pretty good, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was actually much better than when I tried it.
Yeah, I think so. But this woman had a heart attack and she was pronounced dead clinically at the hospital. They decided she was dead at her wake. I asked Jack if that's what they call it in Britain, and it is. But for anyone that doesn't know what a wake is, it's that period just before your funeral where you're buried, and you're sort of the coffin it's an open coffin placed in a room where relatives can come in and surround the coffin. Grieve, yeah, exactly that. And that's just what a wake is. We do it in Ireland, and the wake always happens right next to a pub, and everyone goes and gets drunk. That's a really, really strong Irish tradition. But at her wake, the coffin was open, and she was surrounded by her grieving relatives, and then she fucking just went and woke up. And after realizing where she was, she suffered another heart attack and died. So, like, this isn't really a coincidence, but I think in terms of statistical probability, what are the fucking chances of this happening, that a hospital would fuck up someone's diagnosis and pronounce them as dead when they're not? I'd say that probably happens more than we're willing to admit. Like, it's probably a rational fear, I think, for a lot of people. But the fact that she woke up and then suffered another heart attack and died, that's the real tragedy here, is that the realization that, oh my god, she's alive. And I'm sure there was a few seconds of absolute elation and joy for the relatives when they witnessed that, beneath all the panic and just what the fuckness. But and then she just dies again. I don't know, we keep on saying with these, how do you react to that? But seriously, offer me a suggestion here.
Yeah, I mean, are we assuming that she was in mini coma basically, and the hospital somehow missed the fact that she still had a pulse and was breathing? Yeah, it could have been. Because I mean, there's only so long that you can, go into this kind of a stopped, where your heart stops and stops pumping around blood thing. You can only go into that for so long. Yeah. But I'm just assuming that some lazy doctor went. Shook the bed and just went, she's dead. Yeah, I would actually, honestly, it probably happened in a place where the facilities weren't that good and they just weren't financially equipped to deal with things like this on a regular basis, so it was just a misdiagnosis in that sense. But fucking hell, man, do you know what I mean? But misdiagnosing death, that's a hell of a mistake. That's pretty much the worst kind of misdiagnosis you can actually do. Because I mean, you could always have them where you go into the doctor's office and he comes in and he goes, looks at your kind of papers and just goes, you've been diagnosed with death. I'm sorry. Now lie the fuck down and shut up. Yeah. Shh. Yeah. But I'm living. Oh, you poor thing. Shh.
That is going back to that Jack Nicholson line. Being buried alive is a huge, not fear as such, but that's one of the things I want to happen to me least out of anything. You know what I mean? It's
we covered this in the fears and phobias, didn't we?
Did we?
I'm pretty sure we did. We might have talked about it beforehand.
Maybe.
Our talks before me and Elle talk before the podcast starts, and sometimes they all just run into one big blur in my head.
I think every conversation we've ever had is just one big long conversation.
Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, we've only ever spoke in one pub.
Yeah.
And we just have this massive talk in a pub.
Yeah, that's what it is.
That's all that's happening. Yeah.
I watched Mythbusters once, and they were covering the idea of getting buried alive because you know how in the past they used to tie a bell to the coffin so that if you woke up you could ring it.
Ring it with your toe.
You've got about 35 minutes of breathing inside a coffin before you die,
And that's assuming you don't panic and consume more oxygen than you normally would when breathing regularly,
which is fucking inevitable
as well. No, yeah, exactly.
It's for that reason, and genuinely, for all of the rational thought I just gave the concept of organ donation and how I'm totally happy to do that, and how I believe that after we die we're just nothing or whatever, I'm still getting cremated because it's still a slight fear. It's a fear of mine. Just the concept, I guess it's not so much that I'm worried about what happens after I die that I think I'll wake up in the coffin. It's that what if like Fagilio, I get misdiagnosed with death and I wake up in the coffin. I can think of nothing worse than ending my final 35 minutes of life on this planet than fucking, scratching the surface of a coffin to try and, to lose on a lost cause, pretty much.
Yeah, I think they'd be able to tell if, I'd much rather wake up and start screaming because somebody's stuck a scalpel into, part of me to start cutting me open than kind of wake up in a dark, tightly enclosed space where there's no chance of escape.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
When you put it like that, it almost seems pleasant to feel your surgery as it happens. But that one is just not a coincidence, but definitely a statistical an anomaly.
Anomaly,
that's what you'd call it.
An anomaly. Should we step away from death slightly?
Let's do one more about death.
Go for it.
Just because it would be rude not to, because this whole thing is called The Game of Death, where The Game of Death was a movie that Bruce Lee starred in, and in the movie he played an actor shooting a movie. So stay with me here. Bruce Lee's character in the movie is acting in the movie, and he gets shot by a prop gun that turned out to be loaded with real bullets. So this is an accident that happened on set within the movie, and that's weird because Brandon Lee was Bruce Lee's son. He starred in The Crow in the year 1994, which is another fucking coincidence because I mentioned it in the last episode, didn't I? And I told everyone to watch it.
Yeah, you did,
but it was the last movie that Brandon Lee ever starred in, because on the set of that film he was shot by a prop gun that was meant to be loaded with blanks but instead had real bullets, and that was how Brandon Lee died. He died as part of a, quote, prophecy, unquote, that had been told by his dad years earlier, filming a movie where the storyline in that movie was acted out in reality by his son and led to his death. Another weird coincidence about that family is that Bruce Lee died on the set of a movie as well. Not related to things that happened in the movie. Well, there's lots of conspiracy theories about that you might want to research if you're interested, but that's it. Brandon Lee, died in something that happened to his dad in a movie, and that's fucked. That's just really, really fucked.
Yeah. The level of coincidence is in this episode, let alone the kind of things that we're talking about, is just unprecedented. Coincidences can happen to a lot of people, on various levels, but kind of a death is kind of the big nullifier, as it were.
Yeah.
And for a coincidence of this strength, kind of a really tangible strength to happen, especially to like a father and son, is pretty big.
Yeah, it is. And the fact that they were both in the same field as well, of employment and stuff. It's just it's a little bit fucking weird, I think. Another thing, like, is that in the movie The Crow, Brandon Lee actually dies. Well, no, sorry. The Crow, Eric Draven, dies and comes back to life, and that's part of the movie in The Crow. So, like, there's a whole lot of death going on there that, you know, the movie was called A Game of Death. Like, it's just, you know, it's all just fucking crazily coincidental. And, I don't know. It's probably time to move away from death before, like, I don't want to end it with, like, and that's been the Midnight Hour, and we're all going to die. So, see you next week if you're not dead.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get into really exciting territory now, because in retrospect, I've realised I picked what is now quite a boring topic, because I'm going to talk about the telephone, the invention of the telephone.
What? Not even the smartphone?
No, just the normal bog standard telephone.
Yeah, Steve Jobs invented it, didn't he?
Yeah. Right. End of discussion. Anyway, no. So anybody will know that. Anybody should know. Everybody. I'm judging you if you don't know that Alexander Graham Bell is widely accepted as the inventor of the telephone. Hell
yeah! Shout out to my man Alexander Graham Bell.
What a lot of people don't know is that there was another guy, Elisha Gray. Who was a prolific inventor, a patent office worker, and he owned the company that supplied what is now, I think, Western Union. Who were obviously a telegraph company at the time.
Yeah.
A lot of the details of what went down regarding the invention of the telephone are pretty dodgy, to be honest.
History is written by the victors, isn't that what they say?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the kind of accepted saying. It boils down to the fact that Alexander Graham Bell got his telephone prototype patented first. But there's a lot of things about Bell potentially having seen Elisha Gray's prototype for the telephone, but the big thing is, the big coincidence, that both filed patents for the telephone on the exact same day in 1876.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to, the fact that Bell's patent for the telephone was selected over Gray's, and the fact that they were both working. And, you know, we discussed this before we started, that inventions and kind of theories and kind of things like that aren't often, you know, they're not thought about and plugged away at by one person.
Yeah,
there's often several people competing to kind of get to that, that final point.
I would liken it to something like the car industry. You remember I think the Vauxhall Insignia, or the Opel Insignia, was the first car the first car made available to the general public the first affordable car made available to the general public that had that thing where it could see around corners, that sort of weird camera thing that it had.
Yeah.
Something like that is a breakthrough thing for the car industry, and Vauxhall got the patent for that, so that puts them ahead of the game. And industrial espionage is something that happens with a lot of companies, and that's where another company, let's say for example Nissan, and this is hypothetically speaking, but Nissan gets somebody to go in and look at Vauxhall's books and look at their prototypes and find out what they're doing, and then they go back, report that to Nissan. If Nissan files that patent first, then they get that technology and they're ahead of the game. That's what I'd liken inventions to. We did, like, me and Jack had a conversation earlier about Thomas Edison and how the majority of his inventions were just ideas that he stole from other people. And it's not to say that he wasn't a talented inventor, but his real skill was pretty much knowing how to file a patent and how to do that. And that's I don't know, that's something that happens. Is just the coincidence involved is that all of these great minds in the world are plugging away at this same concept, and whoever wins it, by whatever means they've won it, it becomes irrelevant once they've won it, because their name goes down in history and they're the one who've done it, and nobody ever remembers who almost invented the telephone, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's one of those things. But I think the reason that it's particularly coincidental for the telephone is just the fact that it's such a breakthrough invention for us.
Yeah, and also something that I forgot to mention was that there was an Italian inventor, actually. I think it was 6 years before Bell and Gray even submitted their patents for this the prototype of the telephone, who had actually already started to develop a way to, or he had developed a system for his basement laboratory, his basement lab and his second floor bedroom, as like a verbal communication device that wasn't just like a pipe. And things basically, it involved vibrating chords and stuff like that.
It wasn't a cup and a string.
No, it wasn't a cup. It was quite a little bit more sophisticated than a cup and a string, but I think that's kind of the basics of where he went from.
Yeah.
In terms of vibrating kind of things, but and I think it was evolution. The theory of evolution. Everyone knows that Charles Darwin came up with the theory of evolution, but there was also another couple of scientists at the time kind of lobbying and kind of developing this idea of evolution, as it were. But it was Charles Darwin who kind of put it through, as in his I can't remember the name of the book, The Evolution of Species.
Yeah.
And he kind of had the big breakthrough publication, as it were.
Yeah. I think there's actually a lot of things like that come out of pop culture, that something just won. It just came first. It got there first. It did the first thing. Like, I remember Nokia were kind of the first mobile phone available to well, I can't really say that for a fact, but Nokia was the most sought after mobile phone when I was a kid, by kids my age. When I was like 12, I had one, and I was one of the first people in my class to have a mobile phone, and it was a Nokia one. It was a Nokia 3210. Shout out to that phone. Shout out to the snake. Everyone remembers that. But Nokia had that phone, and then they had the 3310, and then they had the 3330, which was a fucking clusterfuck for me to say, but that phone was a modification of the 3310, where it actually had WAP enabled, which meant that you could do certain internet capabilities with it using 3G at the time. And Nokia got really ahead of the phone game, and then there was a company called Sagem that came out with a camera phone. I don't know if they were the first, but again, they were the most popular in my school that did it. And once that was released, that's what everybody wanted, and Nokia completely fell behind. And even now, it's Sony Ericsson, or it's Samsung, or it's Apple, but it's not Nokia anymore, I don't think.
No, yeah, and I remember it used to be a big one used to be in my school was Motorola as well.
Yeah, Motorola before Nokia.
Motorola were a big one, yeah. Motorola, Nokia, those were kind of the big two, and then all of a sudden, kind of Samsung kind of started blowing them both out of the water. Sony Ericsson came along and blew both of them out of the water, and then Apple just came along and blew everyone out of the water, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. But I think whoever decided to put the camera on the phone, like, that's something that nobody fucking needed. But everybody wants now. No one can do without that now. No one would buy a phone that doesn't have a camera on it now. And I know there's going to be some hipster out there who's going to comment and say, my phone doesn't have a camera. And like, that's great for you. But you know what I mean? It's one of those things that just culturally, it just won. That's what came out of it, and that's how it happened. And that's just because the will to compete and the competition just drove out the best in people. Like, I think in terms of coincidences and stuff, there's actually a philosophical school of thought that comes from the Beatles, and the fact that you've got John Lennon and Paul McCartney, who are both coming up with like this fucking pioneering, revolutionary type music that nobody had ever really heard anything like before. Like, they invented so many types of music that people listen to today, and they were both around at the exact same time in the exact same band. And the philosophy behind it is that they were driven by their own competition, and the competition brought out the best in them. And I can definitely see that being true, and I'd say that's true for a lot of inventors too. It's the competition makes them strive to get themselves noticed and just catch on to a trend, or try and identify something that people will consume, Yeah,
definitely. I think the easiest one to quote from us, I say recent times, but from possibly from the generation before us, was just the space race. Like, this whole the hatred that existed between the US and Russia, just to push one another.
Yeah. And
eventually, the US into landing a man on the moon. I mean, that's probably the easiest one and the biggest one, really, in recent history, as it were.
Yeah, and even before that, like Russia sending Yuri Gagarin was the first man to go into orbit, and all of that stuff it's born out of competition pretty much, and at the same time there is a strong element of coincidence in there, right? That they're all thinking about these same things at the same time, and they're both on the fringe, on the cusp of some kind of consumer revolution, or be it like a technological revolution or whatever it is, but they're always working on it together, and it's the competition that drives them. And whoever you know, like, I don't want to say survival of the fittest, because I know that's a term that's always used out of context, but it's pretty much history is written by the winner, and whoever drives gets to be the guy that says all of that. And
exactly.
That's a real interesting thing, I think, is inventions. I wonder, could we do a podcast about it, or is there? I think we kind of just talk about all the good parts.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, we could always just have a chat about kind of crazy inventions that we wish had caught on or stuff like that.
Like when Leonardo da Vinci invented the helicopter.
Yeah,
I really wish that happened.
I really like the idea of that whole, you know, kind of sit down and pedal your way into the skies idea.
That's brilliant, though. Like, yeah. There's I don't know. There's something about that sort of old school science fiction. You know, like that was their science fiction, and that's really cool to me. Like, have you ever seen that movie? I think it's just called The Moon. You know the.
No, I've been meaning to say it. Yeah, see it. Yeah,
the one.
I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
The French one, from the French guy, is like one of the first movies ever. One of the first color movies, was it? One of the first.
Yeah.
Well, that movie is just their science fiction, and it's really kind of endearing to look at nowadays. Like, I mean, it's aged terribly, but it's still. Yeah. You know, there's something captivating about it, and
I mean, it's always nice to look at kind of, you know, you can see the images from, you know, the World of Tomorrow and things like that from back in the 60s, where. You know, the 60s and 70s, where everyone had a personal robot by 2010.
Yeah, a nuclear-powered one.
To them. Yeah, a nuclear-powered personal robot and things like that. And it's like, shit, we're behind.
Did you ever...
you know, it's like,
no, sorry, what were you going to say?
Back to the Future. You know, the hoverboard's meant to be coming out next year.
Yeah, that's
according
true.
to Back to the Future, you know.
You know, there's a blog, I think it's on Tumblr, that every single day posts... today is the day that Marty McFly lands in the future, and it has a screenshot of it, and it posts it every fucking day, and people still go crazy for it, and they're like, yeah, today is the day, and then there's people like me who are like, no, it fucking isn't. But it's a genius idea for a Tumblr account, because it not only trolls everybody, but it also exposes everybody's stupidity as such.
Stupidity.
Well, not stupidity, but inability to just do their own fucking research into stuff.
Yeah, gullibleness.
Yeah, pretty much.
Gullibility, is that a word?
No.
Gullibility is a word now.
Gullible isn't even a word. Did you know that? It's not even in the dictionary.
I did not.
What I was going to ask you was just, you know, a little bit of movie talk. Have you ever seen the movie Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow?
No, I haven't.
It's got Angelina Jolie, Jude Law, and I want to say Gwyneth Paltrow, but I don't think it was her. But it's sort of one of those movies that is like science fiction from the past. It's like an alternate reality where while the Nazis were around, there was also just this amazing technology that they had, and they fly these robots into New York in like the 1940s, but they have all this cutting edge technology too, and it's sort of a really interesting amalgamation of several genres that all overlap with each other. That being said, it's not a very good movie, but it's just that kind of concept that we were sort of talking about with, you know, looking at things from the past and how they thought it'd be in the future.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I've kind of always enjoyed, you know, taking it into games as well. While I've always kind of enjoyed the Fallout series.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's the kind of almost post-apocalyptic present day, but it's an apocalypse that happened almost before the, you know, microchip was invented. So you've got all this kind of old style technology bred in with kind of this almost alien like, you know, technology of today, but without the limitations, but without the advancements of certain parts of science and things like that. And, you know, just seeing the kind of things that they've come up with and put into the game is quite nice and interesting.
It's like a mixture between steampunk and science fiction, kind of, in a way.
Yeah,
I wonder, is there any way we could take this into another episode? Like, maybe inventions / predictions, and how it could have turned
predictions
out.
of the past, as it were.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
If anyone knows how to sort of put us on the right path here, because this is really hard to try and think of. Like, I hate when I have a concept in my head and I can't really articulate it that well. But I guess we don't have any coincidences left, do we, to talk about?
Yeah. No, I was thinking. I mean, the story that I kind of wanted to tell. You know, I told you just before this podcast started, but it's kind of a coincidence. It's kind of just an odd event that's kind of happened in my life,
and kind of a cautionary tale too.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell it, you know, anyway, because I find it funny, and a lot of you will probably listen to the story and think, how is that funny in any way?
Pretty much my reaction.
I've got a twisted sense of humour anyway. So basically, when I was a kid, and I was in primary school, so ages 3 to 11, we had this local veterinarian who used to have loads of kind of exotic animals. He used to have a pet duck named Charlie, snakes, turtles, tortoises. You know, all that kind of good stuff you couldn't see in your garden or in the park and stuff like that. And he used to come in, and he used to let us, play with his animals, and he'd tell us all about the animals. And he was called the Animal Man, or we knew him as the Animal Man. And a couple of years after I kind of left primary school, he was actually arrested and convicted for several counts of kind of child paedophilia. Child paedophilia, is there any other type of paedophilia?
Well, child paedophilia is the worst kind.
Yeah, or best kind, depend on which way you swing with that. But,
line crossed.
No. This story's crossing that line anyway, but he was convicted on multiple counts of kind of a child pornography, bestiality, and a combination of the two. It's kind of really kind of sick stuff, and the fact, and I say I find it funny, but it is sick and wrong. But this is the man that we used to call the Animal Man, and who used to come into my primary school and let us pet his animals,
and then went home and just took the most literal interpretation of
of all that.
That's just a fucked up thing that like, I mean, I like I say that should serve as a cautionary tale. Like, honestly, just don't fucking trust anybody who goes up to kids with animals. But that's, what, like, people like him are fucking dickheads, not just because of what they do, that all that illegal stuff and all the stuff that harms other people and all, but genuinely nice people are being shut out because of people like him, and because of people's fear and paranoia, and they're making it spread and everything. And that's such a shame that people like him have to exist. And that's such a weird thing to say, but and I guess that's kind of a weird angle of looking at it too, because there are so many other things that jump out at you that you should be more concerned about than just the concept of genuinely nice people being mistaken for pedophiles now, which is a thing that happens an awful lot, I think. But that's just so fucked up. Like, in a way, it makes perfect sense that if he was interested in bestiality and like pedophilia, and he went to a school with animals, he's playing in the right ballpark there, pretty much. But that doesn't really. That's just fucked. It's such a.
I guess you could describe the way that I find it quote unquote funny as almost a defense mechanism, because I really don't want to think about the potentiality, is that even a word?
It's in the dictionary right next to gullibility, I think.
Good stuff. The potentiality of what could have happened to myself or any of my classmates,
Yeah, I'd imagine.
But it's the fact that I can laugh about it because nothing actually happened.
Yeah, I kind of have the same reaction to things that have happened to me, like when I got assaulted. Like, people would not stop coming up. Like, me and my mate, we both got assaulted, but I got assaulted more severely. Like, I had, broken bones and stuff, and people were just coming up to me all the time, like, are you alright, are you alright? And even, like, months after, like, oh, I heard about that, are you alright? Like, all I can really do is laugh about it. It wasn't funny, but it's like... you just have to just...
What else can you do?
Yeah, exactly. You have to just take it for what it is and learn to live with it in that way. And just, if you adopt that as your mechanism, then so be it.
Yeah.
There was something else we wanted to talk about, and this is pretty much... we've done really well in this episode to keep it all together, considering I phoned Jack about an hour and a half ago and we had no topic, and this is how it panned out. And I think we've done a pretty good job, because most of the stories we talked about were ones that we already knew anyway, and it was just a matter of getting them out. But what I was sort of saying in the Skype call to Jack, and I don't know how we're going to talk about this or how it's going to pan out, but there's been a lot of times in my life where I have been a part of a really seemingly weird coincidence that isn't, like, here's what I'll say, right? Back when I was in school, it's probably still the same. You'd go home from school, at 5 p.m. there were 2 episodes of Friends on E4, and then there was an episode of The Simpsons on Channel 4, or even on RTE2 if you're an Irish person. They were both the same, pretty much. Same scheduling anyway, but quoting Friends and The Simpsons was the thing that everybody did in the schoolyard. At any given opportunity, you quoted Friends or The Simpsons because there's a gold mine of jokes to be found in them. And I found that oftentimes the jokes that I quoted, or the lines that I quoted on certain days, would be aired on the episodes when I walked home from school and watched them. It was the one that I was thinking about that day. And like many times a week, I'd find myself thinking like, holy shit, that's what I was saying today. How did I know that that was on? And that's really weird, and that's, you know, I think it can possibly be explained by the fact that I watched these every fucking day of my life. Any day I came home from school, Friends, The Simpsons, every day for years and years. And I think I just subconsciously knew the programming. I knew when the next episode was, and I knew what it was. I just didn't know that I knew, if that makes sense. And that's just a weird coincidence that happens. But there was another thing that I've got a friend called Eugene who I speak to on Skype quite regularly, probably daily. And one week we just had a ridiculous amount of strange coincidences happen to us. We were talking about movies, and we started talking about The Birds, the movie, the 1960s Alfred Hitchcock movie. And then he's just said, turn on Sky Movies 4 or whatever. And The Birds was fucking on. And neither of us knew that before we started talking about it. And that was strange. And then the next day, or the day after that, I spoke to Eugene and I said, I just watched a really, really good movie. It's called Detachment. And I imagine a lot of people have not heard of that movie because it's not exactly a famous movie. Adrian Brody is in it. And there's a few other people in it. I think Lucy Liu might be in it as well. But it's not well known. It's kind of almost an independent movie. And I told him that I watched it, and he watched it on the same day as me. We had never spoken about its existence before. I had never even known about its existence before. It came up on my IMDb most recommended. I clicked it, I watched it, and he did the exact same thing. That's weird. That's really coincidental.
Yeah.
And that's just, I think it's partially explainable by the fact that we generally travel,
have similar taste in film,
and we just sort of exist in the same circles on the internet. Like, it must have popped up in his IMDb watch list. Maybe it was some algorithm based on movies that we were both watching or whatever. But even so, that's really coincidental, right? Like, it's I don't know. That's if anyone has any similar things like that, I guess. I don't really think it's as amazing as some of the other ones, but it's...
No, I mean, there's definitely been times where it's kind of been a case of, you know, I've got home from school, or I've just been sat bored and, you know, flicking around and thinking, oh, do you know what film I haven't seen in a while? And then bang, it's on, you know, it's about to come on, you know, Sky Movies, or one of the many Sky Movies channels, you know.
Yeah.
Like, it's not... I wouldn't say it's... You know, it's not uncommon for kind of these coincidences to kind of happen in everyday life, and, you know, like things like deja vu are always, you know, you always get that kind of, not I'm saying you don't always get it, but, you know, you'll often get the kind of feeling of deja vu, and I think that's kind of also a part of kind of the coincidence, because isn't deja vu meant to be you're experiencing a new situation that's similar to one that you've already experienced, and your brain is taking your feelings from the last time you experienced this similar event and placing them or projecting them onto this new event?
I think there's no actual concrete thing. The theory used to be that it was when both of your eyes move around the room and they scan certain amount of things, and if your brain absorbs too much information, it gets really confused and it's not good for you. But supposedly the theory before was that you'd move your eyes across the room and one of your eyes would pick up something that the other eye didn't, and that confused the brain, and that just gave you the sense of deja vu. Personally, I think it's a glitch in the Matrix, and it's proof that we exist inside a simulation. But no, seriously, I think there's, you know how you were saying about you were thinking about a movie and then it just happened to be on. I think there's another possibility that you saw an advert for it, you just didn't remember it, and it just fell into your unconscious thoughts.
Subconscious, yeah.
Yeah, like the subconscious has always fascinated me, and I've always wondered how much information you can store in there that can manifest itself in dreams, because there are plenty of people out there who believe that their dreams predict the future. Like I told a story at the end of the episode 5, which is the only one we did without Jack. But there was like a story at the end of that was really weird and kind of wouldn't have been out of place in this episode, I don't think. And that's just weird. I wonder what we can store in our subconscious. That I'd like to know more about the subconscious and dreams and.
Yeah, I mean, the brain is a ridiculously powerful thing, the human subconscious can do so many things that you can't even really conceive how much information it can really store, as it were.
Yeah.
Like certain things you'll remember that you don't actively remember, as it were. It's not something that you try to commit to memory. It's something that you just happen to remember. Like for some reason. Recently I've been watching. I've never really been a massive fan of Friends, and I know that often makes in fact, I've really kind of disliked it a lot, and that makes a lot of people kind of fall back in shock and horror.
Do you know what? As I've aged, I actually understand it a lot more. I find the show hasn't aged badly. I just think it's not what it was when I was younger. It's not that good.
Yeah.
I want to say, as weird as that
No,
sounds.
yeah, but I've been kind of watching it recently because my girlfriend's a ridiculously massive fan of it, so I've kind of just been watching it recently while she's here or whatever, just watching it with her. And my parents have always had it on, on TV, whether on Comedy Central or on, like Channel 4, like you said, or whatever. And it's kind of like I kind of sit there and kind of go, oh, I know what's about to happen.
Yeah.
Or it's like I remember episodes, and it's like in fact, if anything, I've actually tried to avoid watching Friends because I kind of had this distaste for it.
Yeah.
But I kind of sit there and feel myself going, I've seen this before. I know I have. I don't remember quite what's going to happen, but I've seen this before. Like I remember the jokes, I remember the kind of events, and it's weird.
I remember I bought a Saved by the Bell box set for somebody one Christmas, and
Nice.
it was every single episode of it ever, which is an awful lot. I think it was 7 discs, and we decided to watch an episode, and I think we watched like fucking, I don't know, episode 8 from season 4. You know what I mean? Like just a random one that I just picked, and I don't remember much of Saved by the Bell because I watched it at that time just before I got into Pokemon and all the information from Saved by the Bell is pretty much gone. I remember the characters' names, that's pretty much it. I remember very little of the episodes. And this one that I picked, that I didn't know what it was, but the one that I picked and watched, I remembered literally every second line to it. Like, I knew the whole thing, and I knew that it was the only one that I knew, but I didn't know that when I picked it. Like, I didn't read the back of the box. I just picked a random fucking disc and chucked it into my PlayStation. And it happened to be that one, and I think that's sort of, you can look at it as coincidence, or you can also say, maybe I know a lot more about all of the episodes than I thought I did. They're just stored somewhere in my brain, and they, I don't know, I never got to access that compartment of my brain until that moment, and it just turned out, like, does that make sense?
No, yeah, I definitely understand. I definitely understand what you mean. I think there's a ridiculous amount that we can remember without knowing it.
Yeah.
Especially, just random things, like my dad is a ridiculous depository of completely useless information. And have you watched the show QI?
Yeah.
Yeah. If anyone hasn't watched it, you really should. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's funny and it's informative, and Stephen Fry is just the man.
Yeah, and you'll kind of find out things that you kind of never thought you would need to know, or, you kind of sit there thinking, why does anybody know that? Whereas I'll sit there with my dad and he'll just go and give you the answer. And he won't give you the answer that's wrong. He'll give you the answer that Stephen, that they want you to give. And it's like, oh, why the fuck do you know that?
Yeah.
And it's like, and my dad just kind of sits there and goes, I don't know. It's just this massive build-up of knowledge that he's got for no reason.
There are a lot of people like that who need to just go on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or some quiz show because that's what those things are designed for.
Yeah.
I don't know how people do it, but there are people who are just amazing at quizzes, you know, like people who just know how they work and what kind of questions, and they know what the trick question is and stuff. And I guess that's another testament to how powerful the brain is, people's ability to differentiate things like that and understand the difference. And I don't know, it's really weird. I think what we did here was described a lot of things that are actual coincidences, and then as the podcast drifted on, we sort of come to a conclusion that some things aren't all that coincidental. They're just,
I think so.
Yeah, it's just that you can't immediately have on hand all of the information that you know, so you're bound to experience a little bit of coincidence in that way. Like, there's another thing that supposedly the brain can intake something like 7,000 images per day in terms of what you see, you know, on TV, driving, like whatever, 7,000 things. But in America, you're subjected to 21,000 different images of advertising every day. So that kind of explains a little bit of the culture that we're in. So advertising, like TV advertising, if you're watching TV, you're going to see adverts that you're just not going to fucking remember, but they're there. Like, you've experienced them, but they're gone somewhere. And I guess the coincidence part is where they come back, but you just didn't know how it happened and how your brain got to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think I'd agree with that. You know, you take in a lot of information per day, and there's only a certain amount that you can really store, and that might just tend to crop up in the most random circumstances. Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think this was a good one. I think we did very similar to how we did in the Fears and Phobias one, where we actually just talked something out to make it make sense, you know, because we definitely didn't plan this, like every other podcast that we do. But will we leave it there? Are we done? Yeah, I think that's all we've got to say on this topic.
Yeah.
Well, if they can even call this a topic.
Yeah, on this discussion. We should get tattoos, like matching tattoos that say in Latin, I can talk about anything in the world for an hour and 14 minutes or whatever it is, and then
see, you say that, and I've already been researching how to say "beware the sea people" in Latin. I'm not quite there yet, but I think it would make a nice tattoo.
It would, or get it in Japanese, because like no one's gonna fucking care what it says anyway. Like,
see, I wanted to get the word soup in a Japanese tattoo. You know,
I actually know.
Maybe,
I know someone who has fried rice tattooed to them, and that's not even a joke.
Nice.
I saw a great post on my Facebook wall one day, or on my timeline, that was like, I wonder if people in other cultures get random words tattooed to them in a different language, and it showed like this Asian girl with the word water tattooed to her. That was pretty funny. But I wonder, could we do a podcast on fuck it, we're ending it here. If you have any suggestions, throw them in the comment section, just like you did in the last episode, which is what led us to talk about this, and I think it worked out pretty well. So thanks for listening.
Yep.
Jack, thanks for being on the show once again.
No worries.
And I don't know, fuck this.
Bye.
power in the verse can stop me.
Like, I'd say he must have consulted the family at some point. Like, they must have spoken, and it must have been so awkward. Whoa, nearly died. And I've completely lost it. Need to take a sip of my drink. I choked on air. That just happened.
Do you know what I'd like to see? I'd like to see you do a whole career mode hammered.
Oh, God.
Signings, like gameplay, everything while you're drunk, live, all of it. Just you going 20 mil. Fuck it, yeah, why not? Fuck it. Why the fuck not? What's that? My budget's 21 mil. Yeah, go for it. Whatever.
It'll probably happen. Maybe next April Fools.